Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Tomas. I have the pleasure of speaking after soccer, after lunch, and before coffee. And I'm going to talk about numbers, so I will do my best to keep it brief. But the idea and the reason for talking about numbers in math when there's so many more interesting programs to talk about is really to arm each of you with talking points and tools as you go out as entrepreneurs with ideas, with solutions. You're selling them, you're pitching them. And the number one important thing, if you watch shows like Shark Tank or other bad TV, that I'm sure you have much better things to do than watch, know your numbers is the number one piece of feedback that people will always give you. Know your numbers. Why do you want the amount of money that you want? What will it take to achieve the goals that you're outlining? And what is your business model? So this is just a way of thinking about what if we were to ask, what do the SDGs really cost? So first I thought we would just talk a little bit conceptually about what it means to have $1 trillion. We talk about this monopoly money all of the time. But in looking up some statistics, I found the following. $1 trillion would buy $1 million worth of spending money a day for 3,000 years. It would be 1 year's salary for 18 million teachers in the US. It would be double what it takes to rebuild every single road across the entire US. This is the best one. It would cover 4,000 outlandish celebrity divorces. That's it. And it would be 1 year of the United States defense budget. It is also, and this is a bit of what we will talk about further on with my wonderful colleague Jafar, it is 1/9 of the wealth of the world's 2,208 richest individuals. It is also 1/5 of what is needed to end extreme poverty everywhere. Oh, this is a little bit small. Let's see. This chart is meant to show and help you think about matching your strategies to your methods. When we go out, we hear a lot of talk about how do we finance the SDGs. There is a lot of talk about private financing. What is the role of private finance versus aid versus government funding? And the numbers here don't matter so much as what we are doing is looking at every category of spending you might have and lining it up to where it makes the most sense for who it makes the most sense to pay for it. For example, education is generally something that governments pay for. There are a lot of models for trying to make it a profitable industry, but fundamentally it is a hard industry to turn a profit on when you're talking about children as the bottom line and a social public good. What we are trying to show here is that the public good domains are the majority of the critical and core SDG goals. The SDGs are comprised mostly of public goods. This means that public financing still plays a very significant role in financing these goals. There is a role for the private sector to play in the energy markets, in parts of education, in digital infrastructure, roads, but there is still a very big, important part in making sure the governments themselves have enough money to fund these goals. This chart is essentially showing you, again, a little small, but all of the different numbers that people throw around when they talk about how much the SDGs cost. I don't know if you've heard some of this, but some people will say the SDGs cost $5 to $7 trillion globally to achieve per year. That is the true accepted number based on data from the UN, and that would be for achieving all of the goals all over the world per year. But there are also numbers like 3 to 4.5 trillion. That's for achieving all of the goals everywhere in the developing countries. Then there are numbers like $2 to $3 trillion, and that is what we call the incremental cost, particularly for developing countries. What money do we need above what we are already spending to achieve all of the goals in the world's poorest countries? And then what I want to talk a little bit about today, because this is when you start to realize how manageable these numbers are. Here are some new numbers I would like to propose. $520 billion, not even $1 trillion. This is the number that the IMF has recently produced in partnership with our SDSN team and work by the UN of a range between $450 to $520 billion to cover the public core SDG focus areas in the poorest countries, to get every child in school, to get every child vaccinated. Our estimate is that it will cost $520 billion. Beyond that, we can then speak about this as an incremental number, and we can even potentially lower this to a range of 300 to 500 billion. This is simply to show you, when we're talking about the world's poorest countries, where we're talking about. You will see that there are 32 countries in the low-income category, which means countries that have under $1,000 per capita per year, and 27 of those countries are located in sub-Saharan Africa. Most people in this room are aware, but it's when we talk about what this money can buy and where it should go, that's what we're talking about. This is where I think our team, in particular at SDSN, is trying to move the conversation. We would like to get to a place where every country and every discussion about aid is leading back to this template, basically saying, to achieve the SDGs, we talk about solutions and pathways and blueprints. Here's a model budget blueprint for identifying what our core expenditures are and helping in working with governments to fill it out. There's a famous politician in the US, not one of the awful ones, who once said, don't tell me what your priorities are, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And this is intended to say, if you are spending all of your money on defense, that is clearly one of your priorities. If you are putting your money where education and health are, and SDG focused, then that is going to translate into progress. Our findings fundamentally found that in the low-income countries, governments can generate 20% of the revenue that they need to cover their basic costs to achieve the SDGs. 20%, that's through taxes, that's through various kinds of national industry, and the rest then is left for them to speak. Oh, I misspoke a little. They can raise 20% through taxes, but their expenditures are close to 40 to 50%, which means there is a gap then of 20% to 25% that it cannot be filled through taxes or through domestic revenue generation alone. What this means fundamentally is that there is a need for the international community to strategize and to leverage funding to help these poor countries catch up. It does not mean that these poor countries cannot achieve the SDGs, and it does not mean that there is not enough money to achieve them. What it means is that domestically, these countries' resources are strapped. They cannot raise taxes beyond a certain amount without incurring conflict or revolution. They cannot mine their way or grow their way out of these in a short amount of time. So fundamentally, what this brings us to is a somewhat more productive discussion about how to finance the SDGs. And that's where I would like this group to come away thinking about. There are a number of different business models that many of you are working on, which are terrific. And then there is a wonderful conversation to be had not only about the international aid industry, but about the philanthropy industry and the role of individuals through Common Goal and through Move Humanity, as Jafar will speak about in a moment. But here also are other ways to think about raising government revenues internationally and domestically. I've outlined official development assistance, which is the aid budget, which many of us know is a big piece of the equation, but what many people don't know is that the current revenue for aid is $140 billion. The amount that is committed but not yet contributed is close to $150 billion. There alone, we would be able to cover a lot of this core gap in the poor countries. Then there are a number of different taxes we've outlined, one of which, a 1% tax on the wealthiest individuals in the world, billionaires, of which there are 2,208 around the world, with a total net worth of over $9 billion, would be almost $100 billion, which provides a wonderful opportunity, and it's a goal that Jafar has taken on, and I will let him speak a little bit about. Thank you.